Hey guys, Jessica here, and thank you so much for joining me on my channel. For this video, I want to dive into a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about or think about because it's sort of morbid. What I'm talking about is getting a will done. It sounds like something that you should do. Most people don't do. Actually, there are some crazy stats out there that say basically the majority of Canadians do not have a will, and that is not okay. I'm gonna explain what it means if you die without a will, and I'm also gonna show you what you can do to get a will done for not a lot of money in a very easy and legal way. So I know getting a will may not be on your radar because maybe you think, oh, I'm too young or I don't have enough money or whatever the case. I'm gonna first share this very important list with you that shows you if you are in any of these categories, you need to get a will. Now, if you don't fit into any of those categories, I would still suggest maybe looking into getting a power of attorney. So if you are incapacitated or something happens to you and you cannot make decisions on your own and you need someone else to do that for you, that is what a power of attorney does. It is not very expensive, but definitely something that you should look into if you aren't ready to also get a will. Talking more specifically about getting a will, there's a couple different ways you can do it. I'm going to talk about two different ways in this video: the old school way and the new school way. Now, both ways are totally fine, and they're basically, in my view, one isn't necessarily better than the other. Going the old school way is a bit more expensive, but it allows for more customization. If you have a very complex estate situation, that is definitely the route you should go. If you have very simple will needs, doing the kind of new school digital way is totally fine in my opinion. Now, I actually wrote a blog post on this topic, so I'm going to link it in the description if you want to check it out. But let's talk about the differences between using a traditional estate lawyer and using Willful. So I'm going to be totally transparent. I got my will going the old school way. I hired an estate lawyer. Me and my husband paid, I think in total, $1,100 for 2 wills and 2 power of attorney documents. And the process was pretty seamless. It was a bit inconvenient in that we had to go to their office to sign all of the documents during the day because they were only open during business hours. So I did take some time off work. He's self-employed, so that wasn't that big of an inconvenience, but for me, it was actually kind of a big deal. So that was sort of annoying. And the cost, yeah, $1,100, not super cheap. And really, at the end of the day, what they just gave us was they provided us with a template. We had to kind of fill out some of the details, and then we went to their office and signed everything. It probably took us total 2 hours. And at the end of the day, it was like a very simple will that cost us $1,100. I don't regret it because now we are protected. We have a will in place if something happens. But learning about some different options, I may have gone a different route. Now, to be fair, Willful did not exist the year that I got a will done. We got it in 2016. Willful has only been around in Canada since 2017. It is very new, but comparing my documents that I got from my lawyer to what is provided in Willful, they're very comparable, and Willful is a fraction of the cost. Not only that, when you use a lawyer, and again, not bashing lawyers, I'm glad I went with one. If you want legal advice, if you want some, really, personal one-on-one interaction with somebody that you can ask questions with, and if you have complex needs, if you have a very convoluted situation, go with a lawyer. If you have a very simple situation, in my view, if I could do it again, I would use Willful. And this is not a sponsored video at all. I just did my due diligence. I looked at their program, and this is something that I would personally recommend to friends and family. And if I could do it over, I would use Willful. What is really interesting, I think for me, the biggest thing is for Willful right now, if you use their platform, you can make updates and changes for free forever. I think they'll probably eventually cap on that because that's a crazy deal. Because if I want to make any updates or changes to my will, which I will need to, because what if I have kids? My older sister is having a child. Maybe I want to put that child in my will. What if I get divorced or there's lots of different scenarios where I will need to update my will. it will cost me $250 per hour to hire that lawyer to make any updates. That's not cheap. With Willful, it is absolutely free. Now, one question that keeps popping up when I talk to people about this is a lot of people think that using a program like Willful or any other kind of like do-it-yourself will kit, they're afraid that it will not basically be a legal will and testament. Whereas when you're using a lawyer, for sure, totally legal. Well, here's the thing. In Canada, you do not have to use a lawyer to make a legal will and testament. Absolutely not. Again, like I mentioned, they just gave me a template to use that they drafted up and I just filled it in and then we all signed it together. The 2 lawyers at that office were my witnesses and that was kind of it. So if you were to do something like Willful, you would get that template, you would fill it out, then you would have to find those 2 witnesses that have nothing to do with your will, they're not beneficiaries, you can't pay them, they have to be completely objective, and then it becomes a legal will and testament. It's really important to understand this because I feel like a lot of lawyers will chime in and being like, I wouldn't do that. Here's the thing, you can absolutely use some sort of DIY will kit or Willful to create a legal will and testament and power of attorney documents. So that is just something I really want to drive home because there's a lot of misconception about that. But no, you do not need to use a lawyer in order to make a legal will. Another thing I see a lot on other blogs and forums about making your own will is people are worried that if you use a DIY will kit or Willful, that there's a higher chance your will be contested in court by beneficiaries or people that thought they were going to be in the will and they're not, as opposed to if you used a lawyer. That is not the case. I think if your will is going to be contested, it doesn't matter if a lawyer drafted it up or you used Willful or something like that. It will just be contested. So there's no basically benefit in that respect to using a lawyer over a will. Also, and maybe this is just me being like, who gives a crap? Because you will be dead. You will not know that it's being contested. You will be long dead. So that's just like something I'm like, I don't really give a crap if my will is contested because I will be dead. That's just me being a little bit morbid. Sorry about that. Another question I see a lot is, well, you know, I can make a mistake. If I'm doing it DIY, there's a likelihood that I can make mistakes. I am not an estate lawyer. If I hire someone, then there's a, you know, maybe a less likelihood that they will make mistake. Yeah, that's probably true. They are an estate lawyer. They are experts in that field. You are not a legal expert. But when it comes to, again, really driving home this idea of a simple will, not a complex will situation, it's very straightforward. I read all of my will documents and compared it to Willful. And yeah, it's not that complicated. It's pretty clear and pretty just straight to the point. So in that respect, I mean, yes, there's always the chance of human error if you do it on your own, but there's also the chance of human error on the lawyer's part. You know what I mean? I mean, people make mistakes. But again, if that is a concern of you, then just hire an estate lawyer. So now I want to give you a view on what Willful looks like if you're in the program. To me, it reminds me actually a lot of, you know, just online tax software, which I kind of like. So it just walks you through all the different steps you need to take. And then the last kind of thing to make it a legal will is you have to print those documents. You have to get 2 witnesses to sign them. You have to keep the original. You can give copies to some beneficiaries or those witnesses or whoever you want. Make sure that you keep your will, and this is like if you go with a lawyer or use Willful, keep it someplace safe. Some people use it in a, you know, safety deposit box in a bank or just a safe, you know, space in your home, someplace that it won't burn up in a fire, basically. But I say definitely make sure that you give copies to some important people that you will know they will need a copy if you die. Okay, first things first, obviously, is go to willful.co, the website for Willful. You're going to want to scroll down to kind of the middle section of the website. There's a ton of info, but I'm just going to show you the prices so you know the different tiers and different prices you can expect. Obviously very cheap compared to going to a lawyer. There's also a blog under the Learn tab, but let's get to it. See what it looks like inside. So it'll ask you some personal details about your name and your birthday. I'm not going to tell you, but I'm sure you can find out my age. What gender do you most identify with? What your marital status is. For this example, I'm going to keep it very simple and just pretend I'm like single because married or common law, you have to do the other person, so I'm not going to do that. Do you have any children? No. Do you have any pets? I do not. Do you rent or own your home? I currently own my home.
And then it asks you what kind of plan do you want. So that's why we'll look at the prices first. There's obviously the premium and couples. For this example, I'm just going to choose essentials, just the basic plan, but you just kind of toggle between them to see kind of the differences and whichever plan you want to choose. Then it's like, let's get to work. Let's really do this. Let's make a will. So first you're going to identify who you want as your executor, which is very important. You can choose, of course, more than one person. Next, what is your final resting place? What do you want happening? I'm going to choose cremation myself, but there's also different options, so definitely take your time and think about this. And then where do you want, for me, I'm going to be cremated. Where do I want my ashes to go? And then what kind of ceremony do you want? Do you want a funeral? I want something more fun, like a wake or a celebration, so that's what I would personally like. That's what I'm going to choose. Next, what kind of gifts, do you have specific gifts that you want to give to beneficiaries, like a fancy painting that you bought somewhere? It could be whatever you want and however many as you want. So this is where you would put that information. If you want to make any charitable donations to a specific charity, this is where you would do that, which I think is actually pretty cool. How would you like to allocate your estate after you're gone? And then you get to choose if you want to give it to a charity or to specific people, dependents, family, friends, whatever you like. Next is asking you some information about your beneficiaries. If one of your beneficiaries predeceases you, like dies before you die, what do you want to do? Either go directly to their children, or you can divide it among your other beneficiaries. And if you have any beneficiaries that are under 18, you got to figure out what to do with that inheritance money. Do you want to wait until they are 18, 21, or 25 before they receive that full inheritance? And that is it. I know I went like super fast just so you got a feel for it, so definitely don't go as fast as I did. Take your time, especially if you have a spouse too or a partner. You're going to want to have some conversations about some of these things, and it's actually kind of interesting going through the process and then really having a good think about this, because I guarantee you've probably never thought about, what do you want to happen to your body, or what kind of celebration or ceremony do you want after you die. It's, depending on your age, you maybe have never thought about it. But it's just important to get it done and have a think. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward and simple.
And there you go. That is what Willful looks like. If you want to try it out, you can try it out for free. You can go through the whole process. You can see that I did that myself, and I already have a will, so I did not use Willful to get a new will. There's no point, I think, unless I want to make a brand new will or make some changes to what I currently have. But so you can try it out for yourself, just see how it works for free. But if you do want to actually move forward and get it, I highly recommend that you use a promo code to save a little money. And guess what? I have a promo code. So if you use MoMoney15, you can save 15% off on any will package. So my tip for everything ever, if you're ever buying something online, always see if there's a promo code so you can save a little bit of money. Thank you so much for watching this kind of review and tutorial on using Lawyer versus using Willful. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, like, comment below, let me know what you think. If you have any other questions about wills or estate planning, I would love to know, so please include them in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.